Hello. So this video is going to talk about Adam and Adrienne Kennedy's play Sleep Deprivation Chamber. So this is a play that premiered in 1996, but remains incredibly relevant today, given continuing violence against African Americans, especially African American young men, given the ongoing need for things like the Black Lives Matter movement and online sort of memorials to especially young men who've been killed by police or armed vigilantes or whatever it is. So Sleep Deprivation Chamber is a semi-autobiographical dream play. Adam Kennedy had been beaten up by the police, having not really done much of anything, and so the Kennedys wrote this play in an attempt to get through that psychological trauma. And it's a dream play in part because that becomes a way of working through trauma, almost a sort of psychoanalytic exercise for coming to terms with these things. So the play is about Teddy Alexander, who is beaten up by a police officer after what should have been a routine traffic stop for a taillight being broken. Also central to this is Suzanne Alexander, his mother, who's having a really difficult time as they move through this trial. And the trial, incidentally, is not of the police officer named Holzer for beating up Teddy. The trial is of Teddy for assault on Holzer. There's a lot of... So, I mean, that element itself is incredibly topical, remains, unfortunately, incredibly topical. But the way that the Kennedys move through this experience is really dramatically interesting, because there's a lot of repetition and there's a lot of echoes of Hamlet. So the play actually starts with student drama at Antioch College, which is where Teddy is attending theater. And Suzanne is a writer, a dramatist. It starts with a student cast. Again, this is Antioch College Theater Department. The student cast says Ophelia, betrayal, disillusionment. And then we have a stage direction. Suzanne looks toward a doorway at the end of the rehearsal hall. She's an African-American writer, mid-50s. She wears winter coat, scarf. The student cast says Ophelia, betrayal, disillusionment. Stage direction. Through the door at the end of the rehearsal hall comes Teddy, Suzanne's son. He's a slight young man, 21, sallow skin like his mother's, black hair already thinning, glasses, wearing rehearsal clothes. He joins student cast at table. He's the director. The student cast says, the murder of the sleeping king. Suzanne puts her head down on the dressing table, asleep at the moment of his murder. Suzanne falls asleep. Her voice narrates dream sequence. All dream sequences have fragments of the dream acted out on stage. So, we've got here some of the most significant techniques that the Kennedys use for exploring this traumatic experience. One of them being repetition, another being fragmentation, and the third being the dream sequences themselves. So, And the fourth being obviously the allusions to Hamlet. So throughout the play, we get repetitions of the same scenes. Sometimes that is Teddy or his father David Alexander being questioned by investigators. Sometimes that's bits from the student drama rehearsals, things like this. Sometimes that's Suzanne writing letters. We also get a lot of fragments. We get bits and pieces of information that over the course of the play we string together into a more or less comprehensible but not necessarily entirely reliable impression of what's happened in this assault on Teddy. We also have allusions to Hamlet throughout, especially to the ghost with the thematic of memory. We have allusions to the murder of old Hamlet. We have allusions to Ophelia's suicide. And so these become these sort of topical references woven into the play, again, as a way of helping sort of work through this trauma, but also to express the experience of trauma here, to express the disorientation, the fragmentation, the sort of challenges to memory associated with a traumatic event like police brutality. And then the other component of this play that we have is actually the trial scene at the end. And this, to me, has a really interesting component because, one, trials are inherently theatrical. They're not theater as such, but they are performances. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, etc., attempt to perform for judges and juries. And there's a lot written about that, the sort of the performative nature of trials. But we also have the play itself as a kind of public trial of Holzer. So we have the play, we have the trial within the play, where there are defense attorneys, there are prosecuting attorneys, Holzer gives testimony, etc., and the judge renders a judgment. We also have Sleep Deprivation Chamber, the play, as a kind of public prosecution of Holzer, or by extension of the cops who were involved in the beating of Adam Kennedy. So we've got that that second layer of meta-theatricality. Alongside the Hamlet adaptations, we have that element of the performance of the trial as a way of working through this experience of suffering that is unfortunately all too common in African American communities.